There we go. You can see we have a new grant application deadline that was just posted. One of our colleagues found this earlier today. So we're quite excited that we have until Thursday, September 28th at 3 p.m. to apply for this particular grant. And I'm just going to share an agenda for this evening and then do some introductions. We'll have a welcome and then an acknowledgement of the land, an opening prayer, and then an introduction to the grant itself, and then some discussion about general grant writing tips as well as particular tips for this grant. And then share some examples of community of faith projects that have been applied for in the past and been successful at getting grant money through the New Horizons for Seniors Grant Program. And then we will have just a discussion about what's on the ChurchX forum, and then a general Q&A for some of the time that's left. So I hope that works out for everybody. And so your conversation facilitators tonight is myself, Jill Strapp, my colleagues Janice Meehan and Katya Britton. And TUCC, which is hosting this webinar, we've been around for a long time, actually 125 years. We primarily work in South Central and Southwestern Ontario, but also go as far east as East Central Ontario. But because this is a federal grant, we decided that it would be helpful to host this particular webinar on ChurchX and invite people from across the country. And I'm the coordinating consultant at the Center for Church Development and Leadership. So I work with churches to help them think about their ministry and vision for the future, including exploring innovative ministries and collaborating with communities of faith. And Katya and I previously hosted the Churches Left the Building workshops on United in Learning. And I supervised this past summer a summer student on a project on collaborative ministries, which has been quite exciting as well. And I've been a longtime chair of the Board of Trustees at my own church in Central Toronto. Now I'd like to turn it over to Janice to introduce herself. Janice, you're muted.
Yes. Thanks, Jill. Well, I've started with TUCC on October the 14th as the Director of Fundraising and Donor Care. And I have quite an extensive history in the United Church, but I'm here in this role dedicated to helping foster philanthropy that actually reflects the values and faith of individuals, congregations, and church organizations across the 4 regions that TUC serves. And I'm here to help create those impactful opportunities for giving through current gifts and legacy gifts that will then also help ensure a brighter future for the church.
Great, thanks, Janice. And over to Katya.
Well, my name is Katya Britton. I joined Kindred Works as the Director of Church Engagement just this past month. Prior to that, and that's what Jill obviously hinted on, I worked at TUCC helping churches to balance the need for revenue. So what I mean, or what the work then meant the use of property functions as an asset that supports the congregation's mission. A greater number of you might have seen the monthly Property and Mission blog, or you already have taken the course Making Your Church Building a Community Asset, now offered also on ChurchX. That course provides concrete tips and resources for managing your church building, including sample rental contracts, marketing tips, and the likes. But mostly, you also get access to a tool to undertake a space use analysis. And that helps you to determine which areas of your building you're renting, when, and for how much. And so how are things used? Because we've seen that this proves to be a helpful tool for discussions inside and outside of your church.
Great, thanks, Katya. I'm just going to read an acknowledgement of the land. We acknowledge with gratitude that the Toronto United Church Council's work is conducted on the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, Petun, Seneca, the Mississaugas of the Credit River, and other Indigenous peoples. This territory is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the lands around the Great Lakes. Today, South Central Ontario is home to Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, including survivors and intergenerational family members who have been impacted by the legacy of the residential school system. We honor them as we stand committed to be partners in healing, reconciliation, and justice. And now I'd like to invite Janice to say a prayer.
Thank you, Jill. And as we gather together and gather ourselves, let's take a moment for a brief prayer. Spirit of light, as we gather for this webinar, we seek your guidance and wisdom. Fill this space with compassion and curiosity, helping us grow in knowledge and empathy. Bless the participants and all involved. Guide us with your grace. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And as I mentioned at the start, but for people who have joined us later or maybe didn't see the message earlier today, the call for proposals has been extended by two weeks to September 28th for all applicants. That is because of unfortunate circumstances due to the wildfires that so many people are experiencing, but it is for all applicants that this deadline has been extended. And I just put up a link there that will be in the PowerPoint that will be shared on ChurchX to where you can get questions about your project. We, the three of us, Janice, Katya, and I, are not experts about this particular grant. And so if you have specific questions about your application, we strongly encourage you to contact the New Horizons Grant Office, and the contact numbers can be found on the website, and the link is on your screen right now. The purpose of our session tonight is to share some of our knowledge about the grants, general grant writing tips, and some shared experience, particularly from Katya, who has worked with communities of faith to apply for this particular grant for the past couple of years. So the grant objectives are to promote volunteerism among seniors and other generations, engage seniors in the community through the mentoring of others, expand awareness of elder abuse, including financial abuse, and support the social participation and inclusion of seniors. And it is really important that you at least demonstrate that you are following one of the objectives in this application. Minimum. If there is another objective, which is to provide capital assistance for new and existing community projects, but that is, you still have to demonstrate that you have met one of the top 4 objectives. And sorry, one second. So objectives are really talking about the how of your task, how you will do things. Then we move to the priorities, which are the value-based goals, or the why. And so the priorities in this case are supporting healthy aging, which might include things like addressing general isolation, addressing ageism, or supporting mental health and dementia, preventing senior abuse, including providing measures to reduce crimes and harm against seniors, and developing educational material to prevent unscrupulous practices. I am just reading from the actual grant itself from the website, so you can get this material there, but just highlighting some of the key pieces here for you. A third priority is to celebrate diversity and promote inclusion, including promoting intergenerational mentoring and engagement, collaborating with diverse communities by serving some of the members of the following vulnerable groups, such as Indigenous peoples, persons with disabilities, members of 2S LGBTQIA+ communities, low-income seniors, veterans, and finally, promoting or supporting financial security. And that might help by helping seniors to navigate and access government services and benefits, or providing support to file their taxes, for example, and supporting the financial empowerment of seniors. So those are the key priorities that you want to keep in mind as you are thinking about the how of your work. And the why. So we're moving to the grant assessment piece. And again, this is on the website, but I think it's important to think about how you're being assessed. So make sure that you're able to demonstrate the benefits to seniors, because that's 15% of your application, benefits to the community and community support. You are asked to provide a letter of community support. So that is really key, making sure you have someone in the community who's supporting, who will testify to the importance of the project that you're promoting. And again, I'll put the PowerPoint on ChurchX, so you'll have access to this material after the webinar tonight. Sorry, I'm going back 1 second. Priorities of funding allocations is actually 20%, and you don't have any control over that one, because it is the purpose of the grant. They want to ensure that there are funds allocated kind of evenly across the country, or there might be particular areas they want to provide funds to, and particular groups. So that isn't something that you have any control over, but certainly you have the control over the other 80%. And then Katch is just going to ask a few questions about your familiarity with this particular grant and share some experiences.
Yes, just basically as an activity so that we each other can get to know each other. Let's do some information sharing as we are encouraging this throughout this course. So please, can you see that you asked yourself what is your what kind of exercises? No, sorry, differently. If you can answer the following questions in the chat. Have you attended one of these government information sessions? In 1 or 2 words, was it helpful? And then, have you previously successfully applied for a new Horizons grant? And do you know others who have applied? If you could just take, let's say, 5 minutes and share with us what your experience has been. And as we've done it previously, Jill and I will comment on the different things that we'll see.
I think, Bev, you mentioned you were successful. Maybe you can put what your project was in there. Be great. I see some people, this is their first time attending a webinar about this, but do bear in mind that the New Horizons for Seniors Program grant, they do offer webinars about the grant program. I'm not sure, given the extended timeline, what that availability might be, and you have to actually click through on the link and provide information about where you're located so that you can hear about where the grant information sessions are being held. But that is something that if you're looking at the grant material that you can go through and do. And if quite a number of people are applying for the first time, and Linda, I see you have been successful. Again, maybe you can put what that particular project was. Oh, great. Bev's added that. Thank you. And Elizabeth, that's really great information. Thanks. It was helpful to go to that information session. And Sue, thanks for mentioning you're just here to find out the information, to learn from others, because that was another purpose for us being here tonight. So thank you for identifying that. But, something Katja will be talking about later is how we can collaborate with one another. So this is really great to just, be together on this session and to learn from each other. Thanks, Lori. I'm sorry that you weren't successful with that particular grant for your hospice grant. Did you have any learnings? Maybe you could unmute yourself and say something about that if you're comfortable doing that.
Yeah, I guess we just weren't we're having a little trouble with speakers here because we have two speakers.
You can mute the other one, maybe? I don't know.
Mute. I'm trying to get rid of
Mute one of them.
Okay, I muted my audio.
Okay, is that better? Yeah, that's a little better.
Is that Barbara Lynn? Should I mute you?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let's try again.
Yeah, it was just that we, I don't think we had enough of this kind of a thing, like how to apply for a grant properly. So we had all of our ducks in a row, but I don't think we planned our proposal as well as we could have.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that. And I hope that maybe we'll have some learnings here tonight. And again, though, you may do all the work.
Did you hear me?
Yes, thank you. We did.
Okay.
Thanks. You may do all of the work and still be unsuccessful, unfortunately, and that can be really discouraging, I think. And we've had others share stories about they didn't get as much money as they might have requested, or they didn't get money for a particular reason. Like one individual shared with me that they had applied for some capital funding to upgrade their kitchen because they were offering a community meal program. But the response for that piece that was denied of their funding was that it wasn't explicitly demonstrated that that had to be upgraded in order to offer this program for seniors. So there can be a multitude of reasons. I have heard that people have been able to reach out to New Horizons people and get responses about why their grant might not be successful. So that's a good exercise in and of itself if you're not successful at one point. So keep that in mind as well.
Well, the thing is, though, is I was I was actually talking to the people in the government about my grant, and unfortunately, you know, and so I guess that's why I was kind of confident that everything was going to go well, because they had told me that they were going to get back to me, and I applied like 2 months before deadline because I wasn't sure, I'd never done it before. And they assured me that, you know, they would get back to me and talk to me about, and we just never got it. Like, so I'm glad that you're doing this, because I hope then that we can see how we, you know, how the government wants to see our proposal, rather than, you know, you might think you have a really good proposal, but unless it's in their format, they might not, you know, you might just not be successful, I guess.
Well, again, I am sorry that you weren't successful in that regard. I hope some of the tips we're able to share tonight will be helpful. As I said, we can't guarantee that the grants will be successful, but we'll do everything we can to help along that process.
Thank you.
And do continue to share things in the chat as we go, but I think I'll turn it over to Janice now to share some general grant writing tips that she'd like to present.
Thanks, Jill. Yes, there are a few tips, 12 general tips that I'm going to be sharing, and these will be available to you in a downloadable PDF under the resource section of the course on ChurchX. So these 12 tips are general, but they are best practices when writing applications for grants. And so if you'll keep it in mind for this grant or any grant that you are writing, we hope that they're helpful and that they will, some of them will really especially help you with this grant if you decide to apply for it. So in general, the first one, of course, is to get help. And Katya and I think Daniel Reed, if he's on this webinar, will be talking about the importance of talking with others to help you along the way as you prepare to submit for a grant. So get help, as well as through the New Horizons grant program itself, the webinar through the federal government. Give yourself adequate time. Now, unfortunately, for those of you who are trying to submit this application for this particular grant for the 2023-24 years, the timeline has been compressed, even though it's been extended the 2 weeks to be due on September the 28th at 3 p.m. It's still a fairly very short timelines. So in general, though, give yourself lots of time to apply for grants, because as many things happen, it can take longer than we anticipate to pull all of the information that we need, supporting documents and so forth together. Some of you who are joining us this evening are just learning about the process, and that is great, and you may be wanting to consider it for next year. The third tip is to read the guidelines. Pay attention to those guidelines. The fourth is to address the priorities of the grantor. So Jill already mentioned this, and she summarized those priorities. Along with the priorities, there are keywords, and especially with government grants, using keywords throughout the application really supports your chances of success. And the government often provides you with those keywords. And in this case, they do on the website. As part of the application process, they do give several keywords that they encourage you to use throughout your application. So tip 5 is to determine your vision and goal for your application, for your program. Tip 6 is to determine your capacity. Again, this is a crucial point. If you don't have the time or the volunteer capacity to carry out the program or the activity that you intend, you may need to rethink the scope of that program as it applies to your application. And for example, it could mean that in your vision and goals, you think that the minister will be able to provide 5 hours of time each week, which he or she may not have the capacity to give to the project, so, or other volunteers. So it's good to really understand and determine your capacity to for this grant. The 7th tip is write clearly and directly. More is not better. And often, and I think you will see this in this grant application, they cap the words. So a particular section, you're allowed 500 words or 250 words. So you have to condense it. So more is not better, and clear, plain language is the best to use. Tip 8 is to create a realistic budget. Tip 9, outline your action plan. Be clear about that. Tip 10 is to get feedback on any grant application. Have someone go over it, perhaps who has applied for it before, if that's possible. And if not, simply ask somebody to go over your application to ensure that it meets all of the requirements that you're being asked to provide. Tip 11 is gather all of your supportive materials. This grant requires a supportive letter. So there are going to be some examples that we can provide you with. So think about who might provide the strongest letter for you to add to your application. And finally, the 12th tip is to follow the instructions carefully and to triple check your grant application for errors.
Great, thanks for the helpful
Thanks.
tips. And I'm going to turn it to Katya to give some more specifics around this particular grant application process. Katya, you're muted.
Now I'm not muted anymore. Just briefly, information sharing, we are talking about this throughout this course. The reason we set up this session here is that you people need, you have access to this platform for the next few weeks so that you can share with each other your ideas, post them in the platform, and you will receive answers from each other. Another idea we want to put to you is see whether you can find a collaboration partner. For example, one group in your neighborhood provides, so is thinking, is doing anything for food, awareness of healthy food. Yeah, they bring speakers in, they tour at a farm to test vegetables. I don't know, it's sort of whatever the program, the projects will entail. That's 1 or 2 events per month or 1 or 2 events per week. Yeah? The other group, let that be in the next town or next municipality, they're doing an exercise-focused program. So another one for healthy living, but exercising. They're using the church hall for these activities. They go to a pool for water gymnastics, have speakers come in, etc. The idea is that the seniors, that each of these groups is inviting to these events. They are invited to, you can invite them to both of these events. So share with each other how many seniors you're reaching in that municipality plus the one in the other municipality. All of a sudden, your number increases of who you are getting in that in your region. This type of collaboration can also happen with online programs. So for example, reaching the seniors in your community with, I'm coming back to your healthy living program that you're setting up regarding food, but through our contact here, you're finding someone who is doing something online. So that program, you can say, well, we are using that program, and therefore so the people who are doing an online program can say, hey, we are showing our online program also to the community in X, and therefore you can add your numbers, because numbers is quite crucial that you're reaching as many people as possible. Now, I want to say something that tags on to what Janice was talking about. Talking about wordsmithing. This is not a writing contest. You're not judged for choice of beautiful language. Yeah, phrases, words and phrases, repetitions, perfectly fine. It needs to be clear, yeah, and concise. You can repeat yourself. Just want to make sure. So ensure you're meeting the criteria to engage seniors, because, and then the wider community, but mostly it's senior. So you need to explain how you do that by providing examples. So I'm coming back to addressing the isolation issue. Yeah? We have a group sessions that does X. Yeah? Addressing the priority of preventing senior abuse, we have the guest speaker come to X amount of guest speaker, or we have one guest speaker come to talk about this and to practically learn more by using role play. So what I'm saying is you have a priority that you need to show how you deliver on that. Here's the thing, addressing the priorities of healthy aging and celebrating diversity. So that's 2 priorities. Yeah, we have healthy snacks after each of the sessions. So this is just an example. Yeah? They are sourced from different countries. Each time, a responsible volunteer will present the particular food, where it comes from, and what the health benefits are. I hope you get by that example how 2 priorities are addressed by one activity that you're doing attached to each of the different sessions you're holding. Yeah, I'm trying to get your ideas going for how you can show how you're addressing certain priorities. And coordinate, right, and then I want to talk about, so seniors need to be prepared to lead the sessions. Because you might have a coordinator that you pay a part-time salary to coordinate everything, but the workshops, so what you need to show is that seniors also take on responsibilities. And that means it's not just people sharing skills, but that includes also that these people who take on responsibilities, they're aware, for example, of health and safety needs. Yeah. So leadership is not a knowledge transfer, but it's also taking on responsibilities for the group. Now, I don't want to say one individual would be overburdened by doing that, but rather think about what it means to lead a group, and maybe it requires two people. The one person who shares a skill or a particular knowledge, and the other person then being the being responsible for health and safety. Yeah. So but think about leadership that you're bringing people to engage in, but do that in a way that that it's not just this knowledge sharing. Now I want to briefly talk about how you want to achieve objective. You need to show that this is specific and measurable, and it must meet a time, budget, and quality constraints. This means that, so what that SMART objectives means is we have an objective and we meet that by, so we have the objective of X. We address that by having, I'm saying a number, so 10 events that will be organized by X amount of volunteers who will then reach out and serve a certain so a certain amount of attending people. You need to provide the numbers for each of these, how you're meeting the objectives. I encourage you to actually spell this out in a spreadsheet for yourself. Why? We are not talking about this today, but once you get the grant, that's the reporting you have to do. You actually have to say, we are now doing events under that category, and these are the amount of people who are working on this, and this is the amount of people who attended that. Yeah, so you can already start by setting up that spreadsheet now, because it helps you writing that grant, and then it helps later on in the in the reporting mechanism. Then, Jill, would you please go to the next slide? I want to make sure you don't misunderstand. We are all Christians, including myself. But the government will not pay for any faith activities. You can do a project like we explore other faiths, but not we are meeting for worship or Bible study. That means you cannot do anything that is solely focused on one faith. But one way you can involve your minister can be if your minister is trained and accredited in spiritual and pastoral care practices. Yeah. Then your minister can lead sessions to address isolation issues. So what we're providing you here is a code from a grant application. That is something you can use if you have someone in your context who has that or a similar accreditation. But so I think so I know of several ministers who have that accreditation. There you can use them. So I thought that is something you can add. And now Bill, would you please? Yeah, exactly. The budget spreadsheet. I presume you have seen that PDF document and perhaps played around with it, and you have found out that this is actually a PDF document you can write in, you can save it, and you can share it with others. And that's great because that means others can also work on it and so you can actually develop it. Our suggestion is that you involve a bookkeeper or others who know how to prepare budgets so that you get that document correct, because that must be correct. And if that person that you're involving is a volunteer and a new volunteer, isn't that great? Because you're one step further to engage other people. So also here, we encourage you strongly to talk to others who have applied before, because you can share with each other tips of what to include and what not to include. So what you want to do, so one thing that we want to focus on is how, so if you're using your building and other materials that already exist in your church, you must list that here. So you can either charge this usage as a rental per hour to the grant, or you can give your building as an in-kind donation. But we strongly encourage you that you mention this. And so, Jill, can you move to the next one? I'll talk about these different things. Yeah, thank you. So this is how the first page of that PDF document looks like. So there's not much that sort of, this is a standard document. Please move on to the next slide, please. So here you see sort of the way this is structured is you have staff salaries and then you have project costs. And the next slide is about in-kind donation. So you can do so other sources, and that could then mean, in this instance, that minister staff time was donated. Yeah, but the building, for example, was then an in-kind donation. Yeah, can you go back to the other slide again? If, however, you want to charge salary costs to the grant, that is to come into the portion number A, and projects cost under number B. Now, in this, so the example we are providing, it contains typos because this is not the final sheet that went into the application. But this, for explanation purposes, I think, or we think this is okay. A, get rid of the typos. B, here the church is charging for equipment for pickleball. So if your church already has the pickleball equipment, that's an example, then you can decide whether you do a pro rata charging or you do an in-kind contribution. And you add in the next slide then the supplies for the pickleball activity, and then you give it some value. Yeah, but that's then an in-kind contribution. Please note ineligible cost. So that's for operational expenses, salary dollars unrelated to project activity, rent and utilities, day-to-day maintenance of facilities, including general operating costs of your organizations that are not related to your project. So if you're not using your office for this project, the cleaning of the office is not eligible. I thought that. Anyway, activities, so other ineligible costs is activities where the role of seniors is minimal or not clearly described. Hear that? Not clearly described. You've got to be clear. Salaries of elderly caregiving services, not eligible. Purchase of gift card, purchase of vehicle, purchase of land or building, including new construction, repairs or renovations to a building, or the purchase of equipment for the new building that your organization does not yet occupy, decoration things, unexpected costs, planned contingency costs or costs for potential price increase. In general terms, include as many volunteer and other in-kind donations as you can. For example, if you already have these materials, include them, as I said. Now, I will leave this section with one example. This, as you see in this grant application, the coordinator was coming in. So actually all staff costs were coming in with 7.75 thousand. Yeah, the total that they were asking for was about 10. However, you can only charge, so you can only put in a quarter of your total grant application can be salaries. Bear that in mind. The rest needs to be volunteer time.
And this application then was reduced in what they were allocated in terms of funds, be it based on the 25% allocation for salaries.
Then just briefly, so can you go to slide 18, please?
Sorry, I don't know what that is, Katya. I have different numbers.
Oh, that's it. That past the past the budget. So wait for your notification. You will have seen that you'll be notified in February next year whether or not you have been successful. Don't start anything. But one other sort of note is the process is that you will submit, and an administrator at the government will review your application, and they might contact you for clarification. I would strongly suggest you phone them, because there's always a phone number. Phone them and ask whether you understood their question. Don't reply by email by thinking you understood what they asked for. Phone them and get clarification from them. So have a conversation. But you need to confirm your response by an email in order to create a paper trail. So first phone call, then confirming email. And so another slide here is something that actually is something we say about all grants. So this grant is decided by your MP. So that means you got to have a relationship to that MP, because wouldn't it be great that that MP knows where the money goes? We strongly suggest that you invite your MP to events that you're hosting. Just invite, but once that they will confirm when they come, and you better be prepared that the MP is coming, because have one or two people just be there for that MP and make sure that this person understands what's going on, and use the opportunity, prepare for it, that you can speak also about your congregation, what the problems are. This is not about your Sunday service. This is about the problems that you have as in the community, and maybe the building. We maintain also very good relationship with your MPP and your local councillors. Have them known what your problems are. I hear that people cannot understand me? Do I need to mute myself or to take the video off?
Sorry, I'm not sure what you're saying. Someone's having trouble understanding?
Yeah, do I have connection issues?
No, your connection is fine.
Good.
Is
Okay.
in some
Good. Other people have that. So in as much communication you can have with MP, MPP, and your local councillor, the better. Let them know what is going on in your building. They might have contacts to organizations you just don't know.
okay.
Bill, what do you?
Thank you. I've just put up on the screen a couple of examples. One of the ones that started at the beginning of the pandemic was with Humber Valley United Church. And Katja or Janice, maybe you can put the link that's in the speaker notes into the chat for the Humber Valley program. I encourage you to look at what they've done. Theirs is a very large undertaking. They are now offering 30 virtual and in-person programs. They've been running it for a number of years. As you can see on the bottom right of the screen, they're funded in part by Humber Valley United Church, the UCC's Embracing the Spirit grant, as well as the Government of Canada's New Horizons for Seniors program. So they've just taken off in what they're offering, but there's some interesting language, some interesting offerings in that program. So do take a look at what they've put up there. In the middle is one photo that came from Hope United Church, and I'm going to invite Brian to speak to that in a moment and about his process of writing the grant application. And then Kimborne Park, actually, Daniel Reed was going to be here tonight, but is unavailable. And essentially what they did for their program was to interview a number of members of the congregation about their experiences in caring for an elderly relative, and are using those to spark a workshop series for other caregivers to support one another in that process. And their priorities in that were around mentorship and support to reduce isolation. And Dino wrote that this approach has provided that for the caregivers, many of whom are seniors themselves, and also will empower them to do the same for their elderly relatives. And their ask for the New Horizons Fund was to provide some tech infrastructure that would enable them to create a professional grade hybrid workshop experience, which has been highly beneficial and also improving their regular worship as well. So that's a couple of examples. And the other example on the screen is a Friday Speaker Spirit series that my own church undertook for a couple of years, and was a great way to have seniors, often retired individuals, providing presentations, and as an online program, and then became a hybrid program in person and online, so that we could engage with seniors both in person and during the pandemic, those who were remaining at home. So a couple of examples there. And then we'd like to move to talk about how you might work collaboratively. Katja has suggested that you work with other communities of faith when you're doing your application. So Brian was going to speak about his undertaking and applying for that grant. So I invite you, Brian, to unmute and share that.
Thank you very much, Jill. One of the pictures that you see in the middle of the screen there is,
Sorry, I'll go back.
just go back for 1 second.
Yep.
Yeah, so the picture that you see right here is two of our, Megan, our administrator, but one of our volunteers as well. And that was in the middle of the pandemic when we had to turn our New Horizons program inside out. All of a sudden we couldn't do anything in person. And so we had to move to a takeaway meal. And so really drew on other organizations to help us find enough volunteers to manage that. So you can go to the next slide. Yeah, and the other thing that we've done, we've made 5 applications. The first one was unsuccessful, and then the next one was very successful, both for monies to do the program, but also some equipment, a commercial fridge that we needed. We couldn't store, particularly during as we moved into the pandemic, we didn't have enough fridge space to manage a takeaway meal of 120 to 180 servings. And part of that work came from, part of the volunteers to manage this through the pandemic came from working collaboratively with other organizations in our neighborhood. They helped us find enough volunteers because we needed 10 to 15 people for the day to manage this. And the other key thing that really helped us out is we shared our applications with other people. We had other people read our application, and we read each other's applications and tried to be really critical about how they're meeting the priorities. Are the keywords there? Does the budget narrative, does the narrative that you've written match your budget narrative? And that's a really key piece, that everything that you talk about in your project is it reflected accurately in the budget? So it doesn't matter where someone reads your story, whether they're reading the financial picture or the other one, they're cohesive and it makes sense. A simple W5 is something I use when I'm assessing a grant: who, what, where, when, why, and are all those points really clear? And it was really, really helpful to have someone else read and give me a pre-assessment of my application so that we could go back and make sure that all of the dots were connected, but also internally in the document, that our document made sense to someone who didn't know us, that they were able to make sense of our project from a quick read, and then dig a little deeper into the detail where we explaining ourselves carefully, and vice versa. One thing that has already been mentioned is be very mindful of the percentage of salaried activities. They're really looking for seniors to take a lead. We, by accident, came across the importance of making sure that you include people with disabilities, and that has stood us in good stead. We have a lot of people with some physical disabilities, so we design opportunities for them to be fully included in the volunteers. So we have some people with a whole wide variety of abilities who are seniors, making meals for able-bodied seniors who walk up to the door, and that's a very easy story to tell.
Thanks for that, Brian. In terms of the budget and coming back to you, one of the people who talked to me earlier last week about their budget or their application said that they had put in a request for funding for carpet bowling, because that was an activity that they foresaw that they could introduce into their program. Once they did some more investigation, they realized that the seniors in their community probably weren't up to doing carpet bowling, and they changed it to having some entertainment, but they did have to submit an updated or revised budget once that was realized. So,
and also, please know, if something happens, I found them incredibly easy to work with. So when we hit pandemic and we couldn't do a hosted meal, well, tell us your story. Tell us how you managed to deliver a program, and those changes through the course of your event or project are absolutely fine as long as you have a narrative to go with them. And one other piece is, whoever you put as the key contact, make sure they have the narrative together, because what New Horizons does in terms of their assessment is they will call you unexpectedly and ask, can we talk about your New Horizons for 10 minutes? And that's how they assess, to make sure that you're actually delivering what you've promised.
thank you. I was going to ask you to talk to that, because that's on this particular slide, is about your program delivery, and be prepared to receive those spot checks, I'd call them, perhaps.
And the spot checks are unexpected. They will call you in the middle of the day, and so that whoever's your key contact needs to make sure they have the relevant information and are able to talk cohesively about the program. And they will ask delving questions, and they're also, it's already been mentioned, but they will be looking for you to be able to talk about what you did, how you did it, and assess it. And keep track of numbers. How many people came to your events, and what groups of their priority groups are in that each week. So if you maintain those numbers, it makes your final report much easier.
Thank you for that. And I think we were also talking yesterday as a group that if you have, say, the phone call is made to your church and it's an administrator who answers the phone, or a volunteer, and they're not the key person to be talking about it, that they would ask the person to direct their inquiries to your, well, you perhaps might call them a program ambassador, the person who does have that information that you mentioned, Brian.
And that's critical, because it's important that that person be able to talk cohesively on the spot about the program.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Really helpful tips there. And I think, Katya, you've covered the follow-up clarification of questions. So I just wanted to point out that we have put already a few pieces of information, a sample application from the Community of Faith that we mentioned was a reduced amount of funding that they got because they had asked for more funds in salary costs. But we've put the examples up on the website on the forum. And we invite you to put your project ideas there, and maybe so that will enable sharing with other people who are considering similar type projects. You can direct message then, chat with others about your project, and we'll continue to include relevant documents and links in the forum. We were also advised today that there's a number of other grants coming up, so we can put the links to those in there as well for people who are interested in some of the other ones. Kathy was mentioning to us that there's an accessibility grant that we're keeping an eye out for when that opens up. Will be, enable churches to think about building ramps and that sort of thing. Katya, you've got a quizzical look on your face, but I'm sure that's correct. If there's some kind of accessibility grant coming up, that will be, stay tuned for that. There's an anti-hate infrastructure grant, but the deadline is very soon. That's actually next Tuesday. And we'll continue to remind people, but if you know of one that we may not be aware of, make sure you put that information in the forum as well, because you have access to add your own details and information there, and we'd appreciate it. So that's another resource going forward.
If you have that contact to your local MP, the MPs and the MPPs, but mostly the MPs, they have, it's not the MP, and you will hardly have contact with the MP, by the way. You will have contact to the assistant, but they are great people. They are fantastic resources who, if you get one, they will actually send you the grants because they have to communicate that to you. That's part of the job.
Thank you. And now we're going to turn it to a Q&A, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. You need to unmute yourself, maybe raise your hand if you know how to do that from the reactions piece on your screen, or if you're not able to do that, just speak out and we'll try and get to your questions. Does anybody have any particular questions for us right now? I see, I think you said it was Mark, is it not? Nancy's iPad, you have to unmute.
Unmute it. There we go. Yes, it's the boss's iPad. So anyway, my question is, listen this evening, a lot of great information. First time we've ever applied for this. Just a brief history. We've had a lot of trouble applying for any grants for mainly for our hall. We have a church and a hall because governments, well, one particular government official said it's hard to give money to churches when they're just going to end up selling them. And so it's hard for us to invest the money in it. So that did go over very well. I was very happy. We had met with our ward and our village commission. We had met with our MP and our provincial person on this, and everybody seems to be good. So my question is, I've listened to and then I read through this document thoroughly, and so there's a lot of information about the church leading different sessions. What we are applying for is capital. Our church hall is used 22 days of next month by seniors, but it's not administered by us. Is that going to be an issue?
I'm looking to you, Katya.
I didn't, so this is about program leadership. This grant.
It also says for capital, right?
Only if you're doing, yeah, but only if you are doing, so if the seniors who are leading these sessions are actually engaged. And if
does it have to be somebody from our church that's leading it?
Oh.
Because that's what I'm saying. We have our hall is used 22 different days of next month.
I would like to look at this in separately, and if we can, so can we exchange? Can we put a written exchange that we can share with others? Because the amount of question I'm about to ask you is a bit too long to actually in our timeline.
Okay.
Yeah, but please we will reach out to you and ask you a few questions, and including your responses and our responses, we'll share with the others. Is that okay for you? Yeah, great.
I think to reiterate, though, what's been said earlier is you have to make sure that you're meeting the top 4 objectives, and capital assistance is only granted if you're meeting those objectives and explicitly showing that relationship. I shared the example of a church out east that did apply for the grant to help them upgrade their kitchen, and they weren't successful because in that piece of the grant, because it wasn't directly, they could still offer their program even if their kitchen wasn't updated. So the capital piece wasn't allowed in their grant application. They did receive funding to put on their community meal program, but they didn't get the capital funding they had hoped for.
Okay,
And
thank you.
not to say that we don't know others that haven't been successful getting some funding for capital expenditures, but you have to be very explicit in that relationship, making the connection. Lori.
I was wondering, I noticed on the first page of the grant application, there's a project start date and a project end date. So if we're looking at doing something that's long-term, and I was kind of wondering, even by looking at the Hope United there, it looks like that's a very long-term thing. Like if you start something and then have to cancel because you don't have funds anymore, do you just keep reapplying? Is the grant a yearly thing? Does it pop up every year? I guess that's my question.
I'll dive in for a sec. At Hope, there was a continuity to the programming, but this year we were not successful with our application. We were going to reapply, but one of the things that we have done is we are going to maintain a seniors meal. And our church budget has budgeted for that, but we're going to be working with some other partners to make that happen. But we're trying to keep a continuity there. We've tried to have continuity from year to year, but you're quite right. It is dependent upon funding. But we've made a decision that food security in our neighborhood is a critical issue of our community. So we're going to continue to fund that and just be a little more innovative and work with some other partners.
Oh, good for you.
And I think that is a really important thing to be considering, because oftentimes with these grants, you have to think beyond the granting periods. How can you become self-sustaining with the program that you're planning to offer? Some churches find that they aren't able to continue offering them, but other churches, as in Brian's example, have thought through or are able to commit to that somehow from their own resources. But it may not come easily either. And I know that you won't necessarily be successful after a certain period of time, because this grant won't be given to you after a number of years.
Yeah. So when you're applying for a grant, is that like, is it best to kind of do it on a yearly basis? Like, or do they look more favorably on a short-term project, or how?
Their window is 12 months. So
Okay.
your program needs to be, even though it may be similar each year, but it needs to stand on its own legs for a 12-month period.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Brian. Irma? You're muted. Irma, you're muted there.
Yeah, I thought again.
Yeah, you're good.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I'm from Winnipeg, and we have applied to New Horizons, and it was for a capital project. It was actually for accessible gender neutral washrooms. And we had applied to them for other grants in the past. And some of the feedback was that like there seems to be a reluctance to fund churches. However, there's a church in Winnipeg whose seniors group is incorporated separately, but is affiliated, use the buildings, etc. They have had success after success with New Horizons. So if you can incorporate your seniors group, but maintain affiliation, use the building, all of that, and they are the ones applying. And I think that fits with what was said, that the seniors need to be taking the leadership. that seems to be a much more successful process. So we're not quite at the point where we're able, like where we're quite robust enough to do that, but we've gotten lots of pointers from them, and they've shared information that they've had for a kitchen, air conditioning, a boardroom. Like it's been like amazing what they've got in terms of capital projects year after year.
Thank you for that. I would have thought too that they're really showing that direct link that we talked about earlier with their particular program priorities with that. But because we do know lots of communities of faith that have been successful in getting the grant as well, that have not had to, kind of do that kind of incorporation.
It also seems that language, like if you can use lower hall, upper hall rather than sanctuary and stuff like that, like not to use churchy language too much, is helpful as well.
I think you're right there. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
I see Katya nodding to that point as well. Yes. Okay. And Barbara Lynn?
Hi, can you hear me? Oh, we're in the same room. I'm in the same room with Lori.
As long as she's muted, you're okay. It should be okay.
Standing with Big Valley and Erskine. We do already have a number of seniors programs that are led by seniors on a volunteer basis who use our facilities. And so I can think of 7 senior leaders who are presently doing programming, and there's probably close to 75 or 100 seniors who are accessing our facility. Now, at this point, the church is open to anyone of any faith and any cultural background at all. And so if we were to apply for this, would we be able to describe what seniors programs are already existing and the leadership that's going on with a budget? Our leaders do not charge any kind of honorarium even, but there are materials and supplies that are required. So for instance, we have an art group, we have a yoga group, we have a men's breakfast group, we have a reading group, a quilting group, a prayer shawl crocheting group. And all of these are going on, and materials are actually being brought in by the participants themselves. So I'm just, kind of asking whether or not this is something that the New Horizons would look at as, applying for grant money to assist with some of the costs that are already going on.
Janice, I think you have an answer for that.
Sure. I think that you could try to apply, but often it is very restricted to brand new projects. So if these leaders from volunteer senior leaders that are already doing other programs that you have going on right now, if they want to come together and create something new, a new opportunity, then you could get funding for it. So that would be my my suggestion. What about you, Katya? What do you think?
Yes, pre-existing programs, no, but it's about spinning. It's so what are you doing new? So are you training them new? But then you only get the money for the training of those seniors, and then to see how many more do you get out of this.
So yeah. So if we were able to bring in a guest art instructor and for our art group, or a guest who would come in and speak with maybe 2 or 3 of these groups about safety on the internet for seniors. So we could build on, and as you say, spin from what we've already got. Okay, thank you. Good. Yeah.
but no, no wool for the knitting group. Because the knitting group already, sorry, I thought you mentioned a knitting group. But so if the knitting group already exists, no wool, no
Okay.
needle.
Because
But
they
if
already
we
have that.
were to have an instructor to come in and discuss a new kind of creative craft and advertise that. Oh, that's the other question I have is with these new incentives, could the grant also help with advertising on different platforms?
So
you
yeah,
know?
interesting you say that. So what you can do is, you have a senior learn, let's engage, mentor something, how to devise advertisement, write up a thing, yeah, and then what you apply for is the course that this person takes in order to do, or a group that takes in order to write that up, and your and wherever you are hosting this. Yeah, so be that on a website or I don't know, but you were saying Winnipeg, so in your newspaper, right? So that, but so you can use any of these ideas and make them a program in itself. And and involve volunteers to do that. So
Okay.
not
Yep.
just your administrator, but someone learns.
All right. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks for the question. There we go. Just going to mute you. Any others have questions? Anyone else have a question? If you're not sure how to unmute yourself, then just raise your hand. Then you can unmute yourself and ask your question. So we have a couple of minutes left. I'm not seeing any other questions. And if that's the case, then I'd like to say thank you to everybody. I'm just going to share our screen again really quickly. And here are our contact emails. Again, you'll be able to find the PowerPoint slides, maybe not tonight, but certainly we'll put them up by tomorrow sometime. If you wanted to take a look at the slides and remember anything that's been shared. And we've also done a recording of this session. Katya, you have something else to add, or was that what you're going to say?
Exactly, and the recording will also follow, be uploaded.
So good luck to everybody. Thanks for your interest in this, and we wish you success on your applications and exciting projects. We look forward to hearing them and reading about them in the forum, and best wishes to everybody. So thanks for coming.